Police in Laos have detained 8 employees of the hostel where Bianca Jones and Holly Bowles were staying when they fell ill. It comes as their families made an emotional return home to Melbourne last night. Our correspondent Bill Birtles is covering the investigation on the ground.
The manager and a bartender at the Nunna Backpacker Hostel are among the people who have been detained. Laos State Media publishing a list of 8 names, all of them staff from that accommodation provider, and an official in the tourist town of Vung Vieng has also directly confirmed to the ABC that the hostel is the primary focus of the police investigation. This comes as authorities in Laos were increasingly under pressure to show some progress and transparency. It also comes as a 3rd Australian reportedly suffered ill effects from suspected methanol poisoning earlier this month. That person is reportedly in a stable condition and receiving assistance from the Department of Foreign Affairs. Now, the police in Laos haven't ruled out that other bars in the town of Vung Vieng may have served the tainted alcohol, but the detention of 8 people from the Nunna hostel makes it very clear that they think the whiskey and vodka that was offered to people staying there is the most likely cause of the methanol poisoning. In total, 6 people died, but it's not exactly clear how many others were affected. A backpacker who knew some of the victims has conducted an informal survey which suggests it could be more than a dozen others who had some sort of illness while travelling through that town and staying at that hostel earlier this month. The Australian government has offered assistance to Lao police for their investigation, and even though there have been some concerns about whether this investigation will be carried out transparently, the government in Laos nonetheless has vowed to bring the perpetrators to justice.
Bill Birtles there. Let's get more and head to Melbourne Airport. Mietta Adams is there for us. Mietta, it was a really emotional homecoming for the families of the teenagers overnight, and we heard from their dads.
That's right, Bridget. Late last night, the families of Bianca Jones and Holly Bowles arrived here at Melbourne Airport. Their return comes more than a week after they rushed over to Thai hospitals to be by their bedsides after the girls fell ill from consuming drinks laced with methanol. Tragically, Bianca and Holly were among the 6 people who died from this suspected mass methanol poisoning. Now, speaking at Melbourne Airport last night, Bianca's father, Mark, stood alongside Holly's father and spoke about just how desperately he missed his daughter.
We want to grieve. We miss our daughters desperately. I was happy to hear that there's been some movement over in Laos. I would continue to urge the Lao government to continue to pursue whomever. We will make every effort we can to help raise awareness of the methanol poisoning. We cannot have our girls passing and this continuing to happen.
Well, Mr Jones also expressed his gratitude for the support from the public. Their love and support has really helped them through this time, including from the government and the Australia Police. He also, as we heard, is urging authorities to increase education around the risks of methanol poisoning. But for this moment, the families have asked for some space as they grieve in this back home at this terrible time.
Yeah, understandably. Thanks very much, Mietta Adams in Melbourne.
OK, let's get more details of that ceasefire deal just struck between Israel and Hezbollah. Matthew Doran is in Jerusalem. Isabella Higgins is in Washington. Good morning, both. Matthew, starting with you, what does the deal actually mean?
Michael, good morning. This deal will come into effect from 4 a.m. local time tomorrow, which is 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time today. So it's just a matter of hours away when this ceasefire will come into force. And what it will mean in the first instance is that there is a 60-day period where Israeli forces will withdraw from southern Lebanon. Hezbollah will also withdraw from southern Lebanon, moving north of the Litani River, the geographic indicator that's often used to describe the different different parts of of Lebanon there. And the Lebanese military and UN peacekeepers will then move in and take control of that area, keeping watch and ensuring that Hezbollah does not move back in and that Israel does not start encroaching back into Lebanese territory. The important thing we have to point out here is that it appears a key demand of the Netanyahu government has been agreed to, and that is that Israel is reserving the right to fire upon targets within Lebanon if it feels threatened. The exact nature of those threats, what the threshold may well be, is not clear at this stage, but that appears to be part of this deal. Now, the Israeli cabinet met this evening to sign off on this proposal. We've just heard in the last couple of moments or so that 10 ministers voted in favour of it. Only one was opposed, and that is why Israel has now agreed to these terms. And in the last couple of hours ahead of that meeting being held, we have seen a considerable and significant increase in the fighting in this part of the world. There have been serious, heavy strikes across Lebanon, particularly in the capital of Beirut. There was one instance where 20 targets were hit in a 2-minute period. That gives you a sense of the intensity there. And we've seen dozens of rockets fired by Hezbollah into Israel's northern reaches, with air raid sirens and Israel's air defence systems working overtime to deal with those threats. Shortly before that meeting, Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the nation. He was triumphant in his tone, saying that there has been significant wins for Israel on the battlefield there, and making this promise going into the future.
Tonight, I will bring to the Cabinet for approval an outline for a ceasefire in Lebanon. The duration of the ceasefire depends on what will happen in Lebanon. In full understanding with the United States, we maintain full military freedom of action. If Hezbollah violates the agreement and tries to arm itself, we will attack. If it tries to renew terrorist infrastructure near the border, we will attack.
And Isabella, to you in Washington, US President Joe Biden has spoken there just in the last half hour or so. How is he framing this deal?
Well, Michael, Joe Biden emerged just moments after the news broke that the Israeli cabinet had agreed to this ceasefire proposal. Immediately he came out, he thanked the French president for helping broker this deal. Immediately he talked about the civilian tragedy, the hundreds of thousands of people who had been displaced in Lebanon and also those who'd been displaced in Israel. Very much throughout his address to the media, he was talking about standing with Israel, but he also said that this conflict was not one that could be resolved on the battlefield. He said that this proposal was designed not just to be a 60-day solution, but a permanent cessation of hostilities in the region. We can take a listen to what he had to say.
Under the deal reached today, effective at 4 a.m. tomorrow local time, the fighting across the Lebanese-Israeli border will end. This is designed to be a permanent cessation of hostilities. What is left of Hezbollah and other terrorist organizations will not be allowed, well, I emphasize, will not be allowed to threaten the security of Israel again.
Joe Biden said that while the US and France will try to help to enforce this agreement and the details and try to maintain peace in that southern Lebanon region, he reiterated as well that US troops were not going to be involved in this.
Isabella Higgins, Matthew Doran, thank you both so much.
To other news now, 3 million Australians will see $3 billion wiped from their student debt after the Albanese government passed legislation through Parliament last night. The bill caps the indexation rate for student debt to the lower of either the Consumer Price Index or the Wage Price Index. The government says it means the average student debt holder will pay about $680 less in repayments a year. The federal court will today decide on the payout to Indigenous people who worked on Western Australian cattle stations for free under a discriminatory government policy last century. The class action was brought by Guyin Andi Stockman, Mervyn Street, who worked on stations for most of his life and was not paid a wage until he reached his 30s. The federal court has already approved the settlement figure and will today reveal the breakdown of the payment to almost 9,000 successful claimants.
The Tasmanian government has announced a 2-month trial allowing people to use handheld metal detectors to search people for knives or other weapons. Police figures show knife crime represents a significant portion of violent crime across the state. The Australian Lawyers Alliance has criticised the move, saying a similar trial on the Gold Coast did not reduce the use of weapons to commit crimes.
Raleigh the bull has been reunited with his owners after allegedly being stolen in Adelaide a week ago, but the search continues for another missing cow. Raleigh turned up looking like he'd been groomed and brushed in a neighbour's paddock, but the search continues for Olaf, a suspected bullock who went missing a few days before Raleigh. We hope he gets found. There he is, I think.